when the person you loved became the person you barely recognized. Okay, so I've been sitting on this for a while, trying to figure out how to tell it without making myself look like an idiot, although, spoiler alert, I absolutely am. I want to remain anonymous. No names, no details that could triangulate. Just me telling you what happened. Because maybe someone else reading this will recognize themselves. Maybe someone else will nod and say, yeah, I've been there too. So here we go. I met them, I'll call them they, when I was probably at one of the best chapters of my life. The kind of chapter where you think, this could be the one. We had that weird instant thing, the jokes, the ease, the sense of, wait, is this too good to be real? But we ignored the doubt, because on paper it looked right. They were smart, kind, at least in the early years, ambitious in this quiet way, affectionate in a way that felt customized just for me. I, meanwhile, was going along. I'd had relationships before, sure, but none of them had the depth I felt, or thought I felt, with this person. I let myself believe in us. We moved in together. Hastily, well, somewhat logically. The city we lived in allowed us to find a cute little place, rent affordable, decent commute. It felt like the adulting version of what I'd always wanted. We decorated, we laughed about the paint colors, we scraped together for better chairs, weekend breakfasts with unfamiliar coffee spoons, the dog we decided to get, yes, impulsive. Cleaning routines became our jokes. I felt solid. I felt loved. I felt like I was finally someone's person. Then things started changing. Not catastrophically at first, nothing you could point with a big flashlight and say, that's the moment it cracked. More like tiny shards forming beneath the surface. I started noticing that they were quieter. The jokes came less frequently. They'd glance at their phone, check something, then put it away. I asked. They said, just work, stress, and I nodded. I didn't push because I chose to believe the just work, stress story. Because I wanted to believe. Because admitting there was more meant risking everything. We had plans, you see. Vacations, meeting spouses of friends, housewarming parties. I bought into those plans. I booked flights. I picked dates. I mapped our weekend hikes. Everything seemed booked solid with hope. But internally, I felt something loosening. Exactly when I felt that I should have been feeling the strongest, I felt weirdly hollow. One night I was lying next to them in bed and I realized I hadn't kissed them in a while. Not that goodnight kiss, but the one where you pull them close, inhale their hair, say something silly. I couldn't remember when it last happened. I turned and looked at them. They were scrolling on their phone, their face lit with that blue glow, earbud in, attention adrift. I tried to start a conversation about work, about the upcoming holiday. They listened, but looked past me. And when I asked if everything was okay, they said, yeah, fine, really. But the tone didn't match the words. The tension was in the silence. And I felt it. I felt the void. I started doing what I now know is classic. I overcompensated. I cleaned more. I planned more intimate nights. I suggested dinner dates. I asked early mornings, let's do breakfast together. I bought them flowers. I said, I love you more. And each time I said it, I felt the word recoil. Because I wasn't sure if they were hearing it or responding to it. I felt like I was holding on to a drifting object, not a person. And I ignored the rising alarm because I didn't want to admit failure. Not yet. Then the drama escalated. Not big at first. In fact, when the first big blow came, it disguised itself as something else. I discovered messages. They weren't blatantly romantic, at least on the surface, but there were late-night exchanges. See you soon, can't wait, you know you're amazing. Removed from context, they could mean anything, but within context of our relationship, they felt like a bolt of lightning. I froze. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen in my hand, mine, ironically, thinking, is this real? Am I reading this right? When I confronted them, I asked them simply, "Who is this person?" They hesitated. They deflected. They said it was just a friend, someone I hang out with sometimes. And I believed, at least part of me did, because I wanted to keep believing. We had history, but the seed of doubt was planted, rotten and spreading. Then one weekend we went away. A small road trip, something we had looked forward to for months. We stayed in a cabin, wood smoke, fireplace. I brought a bottle of wine I'd been saving. I thought maybe this trip would fix everything. I mean, it felt like we needed it. But on the second night after the wine, they disappeared for a walk. Just some fresh air, they said, but came back noticeably late. I confronted them and asked if they were okay. The answer was yes, but the tone again betrayed it. I left it alone because I realized I was avoiding the truth. I was avoiding the talk that might make it real. And in avoiding, I dragged us into a mess. When we drove home, the car ride was quiet. The radio played, but we weren't listening. I thought if we could just go back to everyday rhythm, maybe things would settle. But that's the thing about waves. They don't just flatten after one storm. They keep beating. I watched them withdraw, and I watched myself cling. I got jealous, not overtly, but I noticed my pulse quicken when they got texts after hours. I watched them guard their phone. I felt the bitterness of not knowing. I felt the dread of asking, and I wrote mental scripts. Just ask. Trust won't come back. Or maybe it's late. I kept flipping between hope and despair.
Then came the day, the one where I found out the not just friend was real. I walked into our living room earlier than them. It was a Tuesday. I remember because our fridge we had to reorder and the delivery person came. They were supposed to finish up at work late, but they arrived 30 minutes early. I was in the kitchen making coffee. Their shoes by the door looked off. They weren't the ones they came in with. I asked, "You're back already?" They said yes. I said, "All good at work?" "Just finished early," was the answer. I didn't push. But something in me said, this. Then I made coffee. We sat. I asked about their day. They answered. I asked about dinner. They said they'd order in. Everything seemed okay, but I felt wrong. Felt like my gut was screaming. And then I saw the message. On their phone, screen lit up. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It read, "Can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again?" And the name? Okay, I'll call it M. The messages from M to them were affectionate, regular. I looked at the timestamps. They timed out to exact moments when I thought the partner was working late. I closed the phone gently, put it down. I didn't say anything. I finished coffee, tried casual. The rest of the evening was hollow. I couldn't breathe right. When we went to sleep, I didn't kiss them goodnight. I turned away. I pretended I was tired. And in the darkness I cried, not loud, but the tears felt like what I deserve. Next morning, I sat at the kitchen table. They came down, saw me. "Everything okay?" they asked. "We need to talk," I said. And I asked them outright, "Is there something going on between you and M?" They avoided my gaze. I pressed. They said, "I'm sorry." They admitted more than I was willing to hear. It wasn't just emotional. They had crossed lines. They said they hadn't meant for it to happen. They said they regretted it. They said they loved me. And I heard all that, but what I heard underneath was, "I chose them, but you weren't enough." I was stunned, hurt, angry, sad, all at once. From there, things imploded and rebuilt and imploded again. They moved out for a while. I let them, because I thought space might help. But the pain didn't shrink. It multiplied. I replayed memories. The early days, the amazing nights, the jokes, the I love yous. I asked myself, when did I stop being enough? When did the slump start? When did I stop showing up? And worse, when did they start not needing me? I found solace in therapy, long walks, friends who didn't know the half of it. I read self-help books with exasperated sighs. I wrote journals. I felt humiliated because I had pointed the finger at other people before, accused friends of being the one who didn't try, and now I was that person. We tried, for a while, to salvage. They came back. They asked for forgiveness. They said they would do better. I said, okay, but I meant prove it. And they did some things. We had hard conversations, the kind where you cry sober. We pledged transparency. I asked for access to things they had closed off. They agreed. I watched the little steps. One less secret, one message deleted, one blush of regret. And I watched me respond, one less demand, one cautious hope, one step towards trust. But trust isn't given. It's grown. And I felt like a gardener in a scorched yard, trying to coax green from ash. In the end, the relationship changed. It wasn't the same. We weren't the us I thought I'd signed up for. We were something more cautious, more scarred, more real. The romantic flutter was gone. What replaced it was deeper and stranger. We now have routines where we talk not about the Netflix show, but about the fear, the uncertainty, the, did you feel safe last night? We have weekend breakfasts, yes, but also, how's your head? We ask rather than assume. It hurts. It's exhausting. But I'm beginning to think it's worth it. If you asked me now, was the drama worth it? I'd say, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend this path to anyone. I don't celebrate the collapse. What I reflect on is the aftermath. The thing I learned is how much coasting kills something alive. The early signals, I ignored them. The distance, it wasn't accidental. The silence, it was speech. The message exchange, it was a symptom. And the rebuild, it's not about being perfect, but about showing up every day. So here's the reflection. I once thought love was enough, that if you said it and meant it, you're safe. I found out it isn't. What turns a relationship from a fairy tale to a gritty, real thing is when both people fight the comfortable pull of we're fine and say instead, are we actually okay? Do we actually see each other? I hurt someone I loved. I nearly lost someone I loved. I watched the person I was change into someone I barely recognized. And in that wreckage, I learned that the hardest truth isn't that relationships end. It's that sometimes they should have changed earlier. And maybe the question isn't what broke, but why we let the break happen.